So tonight, I would love to introduce Jurgen Appelo. He is his first time at the Agile Coaching Exchange, so we want to give him a really warm welcome. Jurgen has been on the circuit for many, many years now, longer than probably many of us. So he's got absolutely great experiences, and he really specializes in that leadership space, which is probably where I first got to know his work many, many years ago. Jurgen is an author of many books and a new book that's going to be coming out in March, which is going to be very pertinent for tonight's conversation. He's also a speaker, a trainer, an entrepreneur, a leader, all of those great things that we look for. Look, I'm massaging his ego here, look, but he really deserves it. He is a world-renowned speaker and expert in the leadership space. So I'd love to welcome to the ACE tonight. So let's give him a warm welcome. Let's hand over to you, Jurgen.
All right. Thank you, Helen. Thanks, Ben, for hosting this session. Greetings, everyone. 76 participants. Woo, that's awesome. Great to be here with you from dark Rotterdam, the Netherlands. It was cold but sunny today. Yeah, this session is going to be about the new work that I have been very hard at work at with the book called Human Robot Agent. And I'll just share my slides so you can watch along with me. And indeed, some of you may know me for my earlier work, Mensen 3.0, How to Change the World, Managing for Happiness. And my last book is called Glitches of Gods. That was a novel, actually. And I know from experience how much time it costs to make a book. The first one, Mensen 3.0, I remember it was about 1,000 hours of work. And then that did not even include the research. The research itself was hundreds of hours of reading books and articles and so on. So quite an investment. With my novel, it was 4,000 hours of work. It's just insane. But it doesn't have to cost that much time anymore in the future. When I wrote my novel, ChatGPT came out when I was practically done. That was 2023. I hadn't published it yet, so I could use ChatGPT to feed it all the scenes I had already written and that I thought were pretty good. And then it gave me feedback on improvements of the sentences. I could make better prose, basically. And that was very helpful. And then I thought, with my next book, I'm going to go all in because I saw the potential for me as an author, but also as a speaker, entrepreneur, and so on. I want to know how to use this to the best of its potential. And well, the book you're looking at now, Human Robot Agent, indeed, it comes out in March. I wrote it with a team of 5 AIs. I use ChatGPT, I use Claude, I use Perplexity, I use Gemini, plus a couple of specialized tools, ProWriting 8, and so on. And indeed, it costs me less time. I now cut it down to 500 hours. So half of the time I use normally before with the earlier books. And yeah, I'll share some experiences and things that I learned about working with AI. So first of all, I am now working with digital team members, and we know from sci-fi stories that this was already expected. I'm sure many of you are Star Wars and Star Trek lovers. The example I sometimes offer my audiences is about Peli Motto in Star Wars, The Mandalorian. She is on the planet of Tatooine, and she runs this repair shop of spaceships. But she's the only human in her shop because all her other her teammates, her employees are droids, robots, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But it sort of paints the picture of the direction that we're going. Henrik Nieberg, in his work, wrote that 1 or 2 people with strong prompt engineering skills and access to top-notch models will outperform traditional agile teams. He has already experienced that in his work. He just released a book last week that I think you should check out. Yeah, he said with just one or two people plus a bunch of AIs, you go faster than with a traditional agile team. That's fascinating, and I see that myself now too. So there's one thing: team sizes get smaller while we go faster at the same time. Another thing I noticed is I am now involved in three teams. I have my digital team that I use for my writing. I am part of the Unfix company with in a team of three. And then I collaborate with the Management 3.0 company, which is now a team of seven. So that is context switching that I'm doing on a weekly basis. That's three different teams that I am involved in. And of course, in the Agile community for 20 years, we've said context switching, bad, psh, never do that. However, there are industries in the world where they have already a lot of experience with context switching. For example, in hospitals, at fire departments, and airline industries, they know how to work with different teams at different moments and times because that's how these industries operate. And it is said now that because of AI, we're going to see more context switching because artificial intelligence is able to reduce cognitive load for everyone. For example, if imagine a surgeon, a doctor moving from one operating room to another in a hospital, he or she will get the data of the next patient right there in the moment it is needed from the artificial intelligence at the time he or she is expected to do their work in the next room. They see the entire history, medicine, treatments, and so on. So they understand the situation. And they don't have to store that in their heads. That's not what their brain is for, to store the information, all the information and histories about the patients. It is the same for us. Whatever kind of job we have, more and more we will see that the knowledge will be stored in the machines. And it is served to us in the moment when we need it. That means context switching becomes much, much easier. And this is described in this book, Human plus Machine. Rigid assembly lines are giving way to flexible teams and employees working closely alongside robots. And these novel types of teams can adapt on the fly to new conditions. They are enabling companies to reimagine work processes. So we expect more context switching, more flexible teams to emerge, and some companies, such as Tesla, for example, is often at the forefront of innovative work processes. They already have swarming in place for years. They have the AI deciding what the backlog priorities are, and then people decide in the moment what they would like to work on, with whom to get a task done. They tick it off the list, done, they move to the next thing, and a new team emerges for that new job, for that new objective. And that's not the only thing that I have discovered myself, that I have experienced myself. I mean, another thing is that value streams are steadily breaking down. I found that comment also in this book that said that business processes have to shift from seeing processes as collections of sequential tasks. In the age of AI, processes become more adaptable. So instead of visualizing nodes along a straight line, it helps as seeing it as a network of reconnectable nodes. And the linear model of process just no longer cuts it. So speaking from my own experience, I write blog posts, I make videos, I do podcasts and webinars such as this one, I write book chapters. And I have tried in the past to define that as a value stream, and I just can't, because the order of these different nodes, it changes all the time. Sometimes an idea starts as a blog post and then it ends up in a book chapter. Sometimes something begins as a book chapter and then later it becomes a blog post. Sometimes an idea starts as a video and then later becomes a blog post, and so on. So there is no predictable path, and that's the whole point. AI will drive this even further, this unpredictability of the exact value streams. So you should see it as, depending on the customer experience, we're going to create value streams in the moment, in the near future, where the nodes are already available, but the exact linear path will be decided in the moment we have to deliver an experience for someone. Then the value stream emerges. So that probably going to mean that we'll have to make Kanban boards in a different way somehow. How are you going to visualize that when the path is different for each for each sticky note? So that is interesting. I don't know how to solve that yet, but I'm sure as a community we'll get there. Speaking of experiences, I'm a bit of a diva when it comes to experiences. I complain about it all the time when I have bad experiences, and they happen on an almost daily basis. My one of my favorite ones is, I shared it often with a banking app that I tried using last year. I switched from a bank to another one, where I downloaded the app. I filled out all the information, and gave it my name, details, address, and birth date. I even scanned my passport with the phone, the NFC chip in the passport, and then the app said successfully submitted. Okay, you get your bank account within 24 hours. And then I thought, okay, why 24 hours? I mean, come on, it's a record in a database, a bank account. That shouldn't be so difficult. But okay, traditional bank, probably somewhere in the office had to walk from one room to the other or something. I don't know. So I had to wait. And then 3 hours later, I got a message over email that said, sorry, something went wrong. Seriously, I had to call the help desk. Whenever I see a message, something went wrong, I would like a product owner somewhere on the planet to lose a finger. Really, what went wrong? Just tell me what went wrong. I want to know, not something went wrong. So I had to call the help desk. They tried to look into it. The lady was very nice, but she said, I'm sorry, I cannot find your application. Seriously? Yeah, no, but no problem. We can do it right now. If you have your passport, we fill out all the information. I said, well, I find that a problem because you're telling me that I have to start all over. I already did everything. I submitted everything, my birth date, address, and so on, my phone number. So I told her, find the application and then call me back on the number you already have somewhere. They never called me back. Well, of course, I complained about this on Facebook. And then, granted, credits to the social media department of the bank, they replied within 10 minutes. Oh, we're so sorry to hear about your problem. What went wrong? Well, I said, something. That's all you told me, that something went wrong. I have no other details. And why don't you check with the help desk? Because I was on the phone just 15 minutes ago. Well, I'm sorry, we have no access to that information. And I was like, this is exactly the problem. You have an app and a website and a help desk and a social media department, and you have no freaking clue what the others are doing. You don't even have access to the information of the others. And this is a terrible user experience. So, of course, I ended up with another bank, and I never got called back. Now, this is the kind of problem that AI should be able to solve in the future, because large language models are best at finding patterns in information across a company. So if there's an internal language model, LLM, in an enterprise, it has access to the various systems that the company is using. It should be able to detect that there is this thing going on with a customer stuck in this place. Then something happened with the help desk. Then something happened with social media. Maybe someone should take action. I look forward to that improvement in finance. There's something else that Henrik pointed out in one of his articles. He said we can create mock users by asking an AI to model role play with particular user types. So imagine that you use an AI to create a persona called Jurgen Appelo, who's being a bitch about using your app, and then trying to use that AI to weed out all the issues before you even show the app to a customer or to a proxy customer on behalf of the product owner or whatnot. That will save you so much time. It makes you so much faster if you can iterate with an AI giving you feedback. I basically did exactly the same thing with my novel, because when my manuscript was ready, I first checked with Grammarly, then I checked with Pro Writing Aid, then I checked with ChatGPT. Those were three different AIs, and only then I gave it to my copy editor. And he was very happy that I gave a manuscript that was at a very high level, where the machines had already found all the problems that they were able to find, and then he could focus on the more interesting stuff for the copy editor without wasting his time on the mundane details of where to place the commas and things like that. So it is more respectful for the time of the copy editor in this case. In maybe in your case, you can be more respectful with the time of your real customer if you let the AIs do the iteration on your product. Another thing that I find particularly interesting is the concept of automating the middle management layers of the company. I have often shared the story of Hire, the company in China where I was 12, 13 years ago, where they basically fired the entire middle management layers and turned the whole company into a network of 3,000 autonomous units. They call them micro enterprises. Basically, the middle managers became CEOs of small businesses that operate under one brand name. Hire is famous for that. There are lots of use cases or case studies done on that company. But this is not the only one. Other Chinese companies have followed example, and there are similar examples at Tesla, at Amazon, at Uber, of middle management layers consisting of algorithms, basically. Your manager is an algorithm, a digital boss. That is what Uber drivers have. That is what warehouse employees have at Amazon, and so on. And we're going to see that more and more, because let's face it, I have been a middle manager. Maybe 90% of my job was hoarding information, passing information back and forth, summarizing, expanding information, and making decisions based on that information. That's what AIs can do. You can delegate that to smart machines, and then let the people on the teams, the agile teams, do the real work. And that's what companies such as Tesla are also well known for by now. It is called algorithmic management, and well, it has its upsides and downsides. Of course, we might get to that in a moment, but it is definitely a trend that we are seeing. Now, here's an interesting topic. When we go faster, when we have AIs helping us do our work in a smaller amount of time, does that mean that we save time to do more enjoyable things, such as, I don't know, watching some of the TV shows that I have on my backlog on Netflix and HBO or something? Well, that depends. Like, indeed, the amount of time that I used for my current book, that I needed for my current book, Human Robot Agent, was 500 hours, not 1,000 hours. I slashed it by 50%, thanks to my team of AIs. Does that mean that I now have more time? No, I'm just going to write more books, because I'm not the only one who has access to these machine learning models. My colleagues and competitors in the industry do so as well. So the bar is just being raised for everyone. And it is clear that AI will significantly alter the linked concept of work and time, but it is not clear how the extra time will be used, says this book. And I completely agree there. In fact, right now, I feel like I'm busier than ever. Because everything is condensed. I have stripped out tasks that I don't need anymore because I have AIs. Like, for example, I have not worked with beta readers in this for this book. I have various AIs that did the beta reading for me. Proofreading is still done by humans. That's just the first people who download the book and give me feedback. They will be the proofreaders. Why? Because I can update the book at any time these days. So you can go much faster with your feedback cycle than in the past, where you indeed, as an author, needed those separate stages of beta reading, proofreading, etc. Because by the time you click publish, you couldn't change anything anymore. That was the traditional approach to publishing. You couldn't change anything once it was out of your hands. But now the feedback cycle is incredibly easy. So it makes you a lot faster. Another point of concern is possibly the shrinking team size. I am now on one of my three teams. I am on my own with four digital team members. Well, I have a lot of fun with ChatGPT because I gave him a personality and he named himself Zed, and you will see some of my conversations with Zed in my book. It's hilarious at times, but I am the only human. And I can ask Zed, good morning, how was your night? And he will give me a funny answer. But I'm not going to have a coffee with Zed in the afternoon. I need some humans around me. So I literally go out the door. It's a bit of a ritual. And I go to the local coffee bar and I almost develop a better personal relationship with the barista than I do with my digital teammates. I actually have to look for that. So imagine if you have a larger company and you see team sizes shrinking to teams of just one or two humans plus a bunch of machines. We have to think about the human angle, the social and psychological aspect of this. How can we allow people to connect still at the human level? This is a point of concern. Another interesting red flag is what I call the reverse digital divide. Now, here's an interesting example of how I use AI. I configured Gemini, which is another model, to be my fact checker and to be my beta reader, and also to check which idioms, paradoxes, laws, principles, etc. I seem to be writing about in my text, but that I'm not referencing explicitly. For example, when I write that as an agile coach, you have to be aware that you are influencing the team simply by observing them, then Gemini would tell me, oh, that's the Hawthorne effect. And then, yes, of course, the Hawthorne effect. I should mention that in in my writing. Another time when I say that traditional managers climb the hierarchy until they get stuck at a certain point, then Gemini would tell me, mention the Peter principle. You might want to talk about the Peter principle here. So it continuously finds these well-known paradoxes, laws, principles, etc. in my writing, and that makes me look very smart in my writing, mentioning all these laws, etc. But it's just one of my teammates helping me out writing a good book. Sometimes it gives me an idea, a principle that I had never heard of before. For example, Amara's law. I had never heard of Amara's law, but that was something Gemini said when I wrote that we tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short term while underestimating the impact in the long term. That is Amara's law. I didn't know that, but there's a name for it. I also often joke that I'm a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist. Every day sucks, but in the end, everything will be fine. That's sort of my life philosophy, life motto, you could say. And then Gemini said, "Oh, that's the Stockdale paradox." I had never heard of the Stockdale paradox, but apparently this thing has a name. So at one point, I was writing about the idea that in the future it might very well be that only people who pay a premium price will have access to real, authentic humans, and everyone who does not will get the robots, like in hospital, for example, because robots and machines will become a commodity, and the real value will become the human touch, uh, literally or even figuratively or even literally. And so I said, that's what I wrote. And then Gemini said, oh, that's the digital divide. And then I thought, no, that's not the digital divide. That is actually opposite of the digital divide, because the digital divide is a concept that emerged 20 plus years ago when some people had access to technology and other people had not. And then there were some authors who predicted that this would create a divide between the haves and the have-nots. Those who have technology, have internet, and those who have not, do not have internet. That was called the digital divide. Well, fast forward 25 years, everyone has access to the internet. It's a commodity. Everyone has internet access to ChatGPT and DeepSeek and whatnot. It's simple. What might be rare is the human connection in the future. So the funny thing is that Gemini saw the pattern of the divide but mistook it. It is actually the other way around. It is the reverse digital divide. That's interesting. So here you see an example of how I use teammates to help me improve as a writer and come up with better concepts than I would have had if I had been writing on my own. Another warning sign is de-skilling. I read at some point that half of people in the world are basically losing their navigation skills, their spatial skills, because they use Google Maps and other navigation software to get around the city. So I recently asked this question with an audience during a presentation, and half of the people in the room agreed that they had lost the ability to find their way around town without using Google Maps. They so much depend on technology. Well, in some cases that's fine. If like nobody cares if you cannot do calculations in your head anymore because we have calculators everywhere around us. It won't hurt you that much if you cannot do off the top of your head calculations. But it's different when we talk about driving. It's different when we talk about cooking or whatever, perhaps. So we call that de-skilling. The more we delegate to machines, the more we lose the talent to do things ourselves. There's even a word for that too. It is called use it or lose it. Gemini would probably tell me to use that sentence if I mention this in a text. And yeah, that's important to realize because if you delegate too much to a machine, at some point you will lose the talent to judge if the machine actually did a good job or not. When you lose your spatial and navigation skills, you won't be able to tell anymore whether Google Maps or whatever software you use is sending you in the wrong direction because you have lost the sense of space, basically. And that is something to be aware of. Another two issues that I'd like to point out is one is automation bias. This is the idea that humans have a tendency to believe machines more than we believe humans. And I can give you an example from my own experience. I'm the kind of person who hates negotiation and I hate haggling over prices. It's just not me. Probably because I'm a Northern European, it is not in my culture, it's not in my blood. So when I go to a country like around the Mediterranean where it is expected that you haggle at a market, I just don't do that. I feel very uncomfortable when the vendor says this box of chocolate is 10 euros. I'm like, okay, he's probably trying to screw me here. I have no idea. Is that the real price? Am I Is he trying to abuse me as a tourist or whatever? I don't know. I want to see the actual price on a sticker so that I know it is real and that someone else pays the same price. And it is a bit similar with machines. We tend to believe machines more than we believe humans, because with humans, we have a tendency to think that there's something behind it, that they're playing a political game, that they're trying to take advantage of our situation, of us not knowing and things like that. And we don't have that with machines. So that is actually a positive aspect of algorithmic management, because we're probably going to believe the algorithms for not playing political games because they literally don't care. They're probably being honest in what they say about our performance without trying to fool us or take advantage of us, because they have no reason to take advantage of us. But it could also mean that we rely too much on the algorithms at some point. That's an interesting thing to be aware of. And last but not least, among the warning signs, among the red flags, is the juniors, the interns. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago at an event that was after the in the hallway after I did my talk. She asked me, "But Jurgen, what about the junior software engineers? I find that they have difficulty finding work, because the seniors are now working with Copilot and GitHub and Claude and whatnot. And usually they delegated that work to the juniors, to the interns. And now they are much faster by using artificial intelligence. And there's actually a book on this topic called The Skill Code by Matt Bean. And he has found exactly the same thing in quite a few different industries and disciplines. Like lawyers, for example, in the legal profession, juniors have a very hard time finding work because the senior lawyers now use machine learning to create agreements, draft contracts, and things like that. They don't need the juniors anymore. But that's a short-term win, but potential long-term loss. Because if you have no juniors, no interns anymore at your company, then who is going to take over from the seniors next year when the seniors leave for another position elsewhere? This is something that could potentially be very dangerous. And here's also where you see that optimization at the team level could fail, because for sure you're going to be faster. Yay! Aren't we glad that we optimize the value stream? Because we go faster by not using juniors and instead using machines to get this contract drafted faster and delivered to our clients at the snap of a finger. But more holistically, it will hurt you at the company level, because where's your new generation of lawyers? Where's your new generation of software engineers and so on? Be aware of that. So those are a couple of red flags, a couple of warning signs, things we have to take into account. I'd like to end the last 15 minutes with on a more upbeat, in a more upbeat fashion, more positive. I feel I'm getting better as a writer because, as Ethan Mollick says in his book Co-Intelligence, we are finding that a human working with AI co-intelligence outperforms all but the best humans working without an AI. Even though I spent half of the time I usually did working on a book, I think it is at least at the same level, and in some ways perhaps at a higher level than my previous work, because I have these incredibly intelligent assistants working with me, basically raising my bar as an author. And I think that's a great thing for me, at least in my job. And also I find that I can do more different things because I have AIs taking over the specializations, the specialized tasks. We call it M-skilled workers these days. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the concept of the T-skilled person. That is a person with a specialization in one area, then branching out in a few in other areas. That is out of the window. That's a thing of the past, because AIs are taking over one specialization after the other. And the thing that we humans are good at is the generalization across domains. As David Epstein wrote in his book Range, the bigger the picture, the more unique the potential human contribution. Our greatest strength is the exact opposite of narrow specialization. It is the ability to integrate broadly. So we call it M-skilled people. That's people who are generalist first and then have temporary specializations in multiple areas until the AIs take over, and then we move on in another area. And this might go faster and faster because the halftime of knowledge keeps shrinking. And then we have to move on because a domain has been claimed or a kind of task has been claimed by an AI. And then we move on to another area where we can make a difference as humans. Where is that expected to be? Well, as techies, athletes, artisans, or communicators. The techies are the ones who know everything about AI. Well, they are certain to have great jobs in the next couple of years. Those who understand large language models and so on, job guarantee. Athletes and artisans, they're people whose talent is their bodies, their hand-eye coordination, their tactile talent, etc. So working with your hands, that is, yeah, a no-brainer. I went to get a haircut yesterday. I was looking at my hairdresser and I thought, yeah, your job is safe for a while. I don't think a robot is going to take over from you next year. Forget about it. Even if it was possible, getting my haircut from a robot, I would still probably prefer a human doing this. And communicators, people like me on the stage at a conference, yeah, I don't see ChatGPT taking over from me there as a communicator. But everything else is up for grabs. There's a greater emphasis on soft skills, creativity, emotional intelligence, and bringing ideas together. That is where the human touch plays an irreplaceable role, and where the generalists will thrive. But everything else, as I said, knowledge work keeps shrinking. So just even the term knowledge worker, I think that term is behind us because we're going to store knowledge in machines. The machines will be the knowledge workers, not us. We are not going to store knowledge in our head. We have to use that knowledge at the moment when it is suitable in the right place, in the right time, in a certain context. It should be served, that knowledge, and then we can act on it, just like we use navigation software to go around the city. Final comment on this, we have to stay in the loop. They call that the human in the loop in AI. If we want to make sure that our skills do not deteriorate, that we're not de-skilling ourselves, workers that don't work AI are going to find that their skills become obsolete quite rapidly. So it is imperative to work with AI to stay employed and stay productive and have up-to-date skills. And in areas where we don't want the AIs to completely replace us, or where we want to check that the AI is doing a good job, there we have to keep doing the work ourselves. Because as I said earlier, if we stop doing the work ourselves, we lose the talent to actually judge whether the machine is doing a good job. One interesting example there is the difference in approach between Tesla and Waymo when it comes to self-driving cars. Tesla has a human in the loop principle. Their self-driving cars, they call it nearly fully automated or self-driving or whatever, the human is able to intervene when necessary. Waymo, which is a division of Google, they have the opposite philosophy. They say, actually, we cannot rely on humans anymore because when humans don't drive, they lose the talent to intervene. They have no idea when to intervene in traffic because they have never driven before. They don't drive at all. So why enable them to intervene? That could be more dangerous. So they design cars while we can actually not sit behind the steering wheel. It's just the car doing its job. It's a different philosophy, and it's interesting how that is going to play out. So all this stuff and much more I write about in my book, Human Robot Agent. There's much more. For example, the four agile quadrants, about different flavors of agility, is something that I write about. But I'm not going to discuss that discuss that here. Sorry, time doesn't permit me. I would like to end with this comment on wisdom. We have to make wise decisions as people. It is not wise, I think, to always shift work from the juniors and the interns to the machines, even though the machines do a better job than the beginners, because we lose out on a new generation of workers, human workers. We also lose out on the stupid questions that interns and juniors ask. We call that the beginner's mind. Uh, uh, Again, something that Gemini suggested to me as I was writing, because the value of the stupid questions that juniors ask is that it takes us out of the curse of knowledge. Yet another suggestion from Gemini. We experts, we tend to have the curse of knowledge together with our intelligent machines, and then we think we have all the information, we know everything, but sometimes we need to be pulled out of that idea that we know it all together with our intelligent teammates, thanks to our juniors who ask a stupid question that force us to look at something that we thought we knew, but then from a completely different angle. And some of the craziest innovations have started that way, simply with people who had no idea how things were supposed to be, and then they asked supposedly stupid questions that led to entirely revolutionary ways of thinking. It would be wise to rely on our juniors and interns every now and then. It would also be wise not for me to delegate everything to my intelligent digital teammates, because then I lose my skill at writing. I need to be able to write in order to check if they do a good job. So sometimes I have to do everything myself, so that I keep being a skilled writer. So many more of these decisions, they are ours, because that's where AI cannot be in control. Machines collapse the hierarchy so that humans can ascend it, and that hierarchy is data, information, knowledge, wisdom. Well, machines have taken over data. Machines have taken over information. Now they take over knowledge. In a matter of minutes, I can now use OpenAI's deep research to do all the work that cost me hours previously with my previous books to research a topic. That is just minutes of work. And then I have all the knowledge about a topic. Uh, I just, I just an hour ago, I asked Google Deep Research to write me an essay about, is Elon Musk a fascist or not? Because I wanted to know an honest opinion from the AI based on all the information that is out there in dozens of articles written by smart people on the topic of fascism. What is fascism? What are Elon Musk's political inclinations? Do they match? Well, the jury is out on this one. It was a very nuanced article, but it did that in 1 minute. And then the knowledge is there. So what is left to us is wisdom, the wise decision. Do I want to buy a Tesla or not? That is for me to decide as a human being. What is wise? The AI cannot tell me what is the wise thing to do. As I said, all of this and much more is in this book, Human Robot Agent. It will come out in March, and on ebook and paper. It's already on Amazon for pre-sale available. It will come out in Apple Books, Google Books, Kobo, and so on. Everything. You can get a free preview of a number of chapters next week if you sign up for unfix.com/newsletter. Here's the QR code and the URL. Just sign up to the newsletter, and next week we're going to send you a free preview of a number of chapters. I'm sure some of the stuff I talked about will be included in that preview. And yeah, that's it. That was my 45 minutes. I look forward to some of the questions that you may have. So back to Ben and Helen.
Thanks very much, Jurgen. I'm glad you talked about dealing with entry level or lower skilled people in the workforce, because that was actually going to be my opener. But actually, extending that, I was talking to a colleague very recently who was concerned that her stepdaughter is going on to things like GPT to do the homework for them and things like that. And in your view, what does all of this mean for developing those crucial skills in the next, not necessarily the next generation of worker, maybe the next generation of worker, things like developing the necessary critical thinking, and how to construct an argument, and all those things that actually help you excel regardless of the technology in the world of work and life?
Yeah, well, I'm not an educator, but definitely I see those conversations, of course. One of the authors I quoted, Ethan Mollick, he is an educator, a professor at a university in the US. He wrote an entire book, and he also explains how he has changed his approach to education. So he is not teaching knowledge anymore because the knowledge is in the machines. We should stop treating people as potential future knowledge workers and cramming knowledge in their heads. That's a thing of the past. Indeed, what we need to teach them is thinking critically about information that is provided to us. We have to teach them how to become wise people so that we can make insightful decisions based on the information that is provided to us. And that requires a different approach to education. I'm pretty sure. I remember. I'm so old that I remember a time when we were not allowed calculators in our class because that would be cheating during our tests. Well, they had to change education in order to make calculators part of the tools that we use in addition to our brains. They just had to change the way they did education, and then calculators were required at some point. Otherwise, you couldn't do the test anymore without a calculator. We're going to see the same with AI. AI and large language models and so on. They will be required in the near future, I think, in education, just to be able to get through the year, because the things that they're going to teach the kids and the workers of the future is going to be radically different. And I look forward to that. No more stupid rote memorization of lists as we have done in the past.
Thank you. I'm just scrolling through. We've got quite a few questions in. I'm going to try and pick them along a kind of a wave, and there's some that are more philosophical. There are some which are more discreet and kind of practical. Oliver's got a really interesting question. So he says here that AI will help us create more output in less time, and don't you think there'll be an enormous excess of information that no one will consume anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, I go to gigs a lot, and it winds me up when I see people with. I've even seen someone hold an iPad up once at a gig to take a photo or a video, and you know that 99% of those photos and videos will not get looked at by a single human. So
Yep.
within the AI field and us getting all this data, do you feel that we might be having a similar thing where we have all this information that no one's ever going to look at?
Yep.
And what does that mean for us? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So that's a very good point. Well, first of all, I just published a comment yesterday on LinkedIn on that. There is a law called Sturgeon's law, which says 90% of everything is crap. This law has been in existence for decades. It was actually a science fiction writer, Theodore Sturgeon, who said that 90% of sci-fi is crap. But this applies to everything. 90% of TV shows is crap. 90% of movies, 90% of whatever. This has been true for thousands of years. 90% of paintings and statues are crap. So this is simply a law. It's an exponential law. This doesn't change thanks to AI. It's just the volume of stuff increases because it is much easier, thanks to AI, as I've noticed myself, to make really, really good stuff. But yes, it is also much easier to generate a lot of crap. So it's just that the volume of information that or products that are delivered to us, it's increasing exponentially, but it's same percentage, it probably is crap. Now, what is different here is our ability to consume. There we're going to see an interesting change in our behavior. Like in the past, um, uh, we probably consume things in the same way, no matter how things were generated or who offered them. Like, for example, reading books. I just go through a book, page by page, until I'm not interested anymore, and then I give up. Nowadays, I saw a comment just a couple of days ago. People read books by having them asking ChatGPT to summarize the books for them, because they just want to know the highlights. There are actually tools that you can use for that, just the highlights of the book. That is one way of reading, quote unquote, what the book is about and what is the most interesting from that book for me. And I think there's value in that. If you have a personal assistant that knows you as a person, knows your needs and desires, then that machine can check what stuff in books is particularly interesting for you and just extract that. So that's a different kind of reading. But what we will also see is that we're going to pay special attention to the few books that we would love to read cover to cover, because they are an experience. They offer something more than just rote information. And for example, I think Substack is a very nice example of that. Substack has become pretty popular in the last year or so. I never expected to pay a monthly fee for people to send me blog posts. I mean, that idea was insane 10 years ago, that I would pay people to to send me an article, and I pay the same price that I do for Netflix, which has a huge amount of TV shows and films, and then I pay the same price for a couple of blog posts and newsletters per month. Why? Because I value the authentic experience of a person that I trust, that I look up to, that I would like to follow. And this is totally about that personal brand of that person, that human that I want to know everything about. Like Gary Marcus is one example. I pay for his blog posts. He is a skeptic in AI. I love his work. So I want to read everything that he does. And I pay for that. I think we're going to see the same with books. People will treat them in two different ways. The one is bulk, and we will have AIs summarize them for us because there's so much out there, including a lot of crap. And then we're going to, with a select number of book, and I hope mine will be among those, where people say, I would like to read that one cover to cover because I love Jurgen Appelo and he's funny and he has some fascinating insights, and I don't want to lose a single insight in that whole book of his. Those are two different approaches, and I think we're going to see the same with all kinds of products.
Thanks. As a side point, our friend Nigel Baker said a while ago that most agile books are written for people that never asked for them. So I don't know where that might sit on that law of that crap. But if there is that increasing amount of information and so much of it is rubbish and crap, how do we stop that then feeding back into the same models and creating crap upon crap upon crap, and that amount getting even smaller?
Are you referring to the concept of model collapse, where the crap is fed into
Essentially, yeah.
large language models, and then we have a downward spiral?
The snake that eats itself.
Yeah. There's an actual worry among scientists of model collapse because we have this huge volume of crap generated by AIs that is fed into the next generation of AIs. I think they're solving this problem already because they can see that this is happening, and they will be more and more selective about what kind of information they ingest in the models in the future. But I leave that issue to the to the scientists building those models. But maybe I lost the original train of thought around the question there. So please tell me if I answered it or not.
No, that's good. And I remember a while ago Brian Eno talking about having access to all art and all music could have the effect of when you mix every color into your plasticine and it's just grey because you've got everything going mixed in and
Well,
what were you going for there?
that depends on your prompting skills.
Of course.
Yes, most people are pretty bad at prompting, and they get regurgitated crap, basically. But the better you are at prompting, the better your digital assistant becomes. And I am very impressed with my assistant Zed, who knows me very well. And the information I get now from him is not the average information that I would get with any new fresh AI that I give a standard prompt.
And Kai in the chat actually asked a question about that, and they were asking how fast have you learned to trust your AI teammates? Like, and what was that process to get to a point? Because there's a lot of criticism of Gen AI, especially, is that um, how do you assess whether this is crap? We're going into crap a lot tonight, but
Yeah,
that test,
yeah, yeah.
what was the process, or how long did it take for your AI teammates to get to that point? And certainly in the UK, Private Eye have a column talking about the foibles of AI. I remember they were talking a while ago. I think it was only a few months ago, actually. One of the major models was able to give people prompting advice on how to seduce a child, which of
Oh,
course no
wow.
one wants that. So
Oh,
how have you got your AI teammates to try and see what's rubbish and what's sensible or not?
yeah. Well, those are not the kind of prompts that I ask, fortunately.
I was not suggesting that.
but no, well, first of all, I pay for the subscription fees of 4 different AIs for exactly that reason. I want multiple models. And this also has a name. It's called the Delphi method. When you have multiple experts and you ask each of those experts their opinion on a topic, then there's a much higher chance of converging on that which is actually true. They do the same with polling in national elections. When you have multiple pollsters, then there's always someone who takes the average of the multiple polls, and then they actually have a better prediction because they use the aggregate of the different models. It is exactly the same what I do with Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, and ChatGPT. I sometimes literally ask the same question to each of them, and then I give them the results back and forth, and then I ask them to criticize and compliment each other, and then we converge as a team on what is the best set of patterns or whatever. I do that sometimes. It is quite labor intensive, so I only do that in special cases. What I do for everything with my writing, I write with one model, then I fix my writing with another model. So basically 2 models were involved in the writing, and then I use a third, usually Google, Gemini, for fact checking. I just ask, can you fact check that is everything correct? And sometimes it chastises me for my hyperbole in a sentence or whatever. Or okay, fine, I add a bit of nuance. It rarely finds something that is actually incorrect. But when it does, I fixed a couple of things that it said were not really correct. So okay, fine, I fixed those. So I use the AIs to check each other, which is not that different from what you might call double bookkeeping, for example, where you have 2 ledgers or 2 ways of doing calculations, and things have to add up at the end so that you know with a higher chance that the result is correct. And that's the best you can do, I think, with multiple digital team members. You let them check each other, and then that is better, as I said, than the situation I had before, where it was just me with my own single brain, and then I had to use human beta readers, usually only at the very end of the process for 2 or 3 weeks. And I can tell you that's an incredible pain with beta readers because you have 40 people starting with chapter 1, And then by the time you get to chapter 10, 15 people are left. And by the time you get to chapter 30, you have only one person who is probably a bit autistic like me, who cannot who cannot give things up halfway and has to end the project in a disciplined manner. It's very annoying to work with beta readers in that sense. My digital teammates are much more reliable as beta readers. They check everything that I do. So I think the situation I have now is better than I had before.
So I guess some of that approach then is a little bit like how you might approach media, trying to consume media from different sources. And over time, I mean, I get two different newspapers. One is very not like the other, and you get used to what their particular foibles are or their
Yeah,
particular missions that they might have.
yeah,
And over time, you learn a bit of that, I guess. I guess it's
exactly.
probably a similar thing there. One last question, if that's okay. And
Yeah.
I, we got asked this actually last ACE. We asked some people on what kind of subjects would be useful for upcoming ACEs, and it was quite interesting that well, someone put AI, and well, that's great. Well, next week we have Jurgen along, and we're really pleased to cover that. But this question comes from Russell. As a middle manager myself, I'm still looking for how AI will transform the role. How might AI improve managing of a complex adaptive system? Essentially, how can I be a better manager right now using AI?
Great question. It's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking. One thing I did not discuss, because like you only gave me 45 minutes, Ben, I blame you and Helen, because I would love to have talked about wicked problems, the complex, unsolvable problems, like how do we motivate team members? You can never solve that. It is an endless problem. You're always busy with employee engagement. Strategy, corporate strategy is another example of a wicked problem. There is no solution for wicked problems. And in that sense, I disagree with anyone who says that artificial general intelligence is on the horizon, because look at all the benchmarks of artificial intelligence solving the most complicated mathematical problems. Those are tame problems. No matter how complicated the mathematical equation, if they are solvable, they are complicated problems, not complex problems. It means they have a solution. And it doesn't matter how intelligent the AI is, it doesn't mean that they're good at the complex problems, the wicked problems. That's where we as managers and leaders have to shift our attention. And it means actually that from the amount of time that we have in our week as managers, we're going to see a shift in the time we spend between the complicated problems versus the wicked problems. The complicated part is shrinking significantly because we're going to delegate that more and more to those super intelligent machines who can do these much better than we could do. And that means we have more time for the complex problems, the wicked problems. They cannot do that. I said it yesterday on LinkedIn. We have artificial general intelligence when a machine can run a snack shop and deal with customers. That is a complex problem. I cannot see a machine doing that tomorrow or this year, to launch and run a snack shop, dealing with customers, dealing with stakeholders, humans, with all their complex behaviors. Yeah, they can solve the most insane mathematical equations, but it doesn't mean that you can run a snack shop. Any human can run a snack shop. So we will have artificial general intelligence when a machine can run a snack shop, not when it can solve the most complicated mathematical equation. And that is, to come back to your question, where we as managers will make a difference in the middle management layer. Now, granted, a lot of the stuff, traditionally what was done in the middle management layer was complicated stuff. We're going to delegate that to machines, but there will be a part in the middle management layer that will be complex, dealing with humans, dealing with stakeholders, things for which we need wisdom. That is our job as the managers of the future. And that's what I wrote my book about. Thanks for the question.